His name is Krampus. He and his helpers did not come to give, but to take.
Yeah, Krampus, motherfuckers. Remember being worried about being beat with a stick by a face-licking, half-goat horned Christmas demon who might throw you in a sack and then take you to hell if you didn't get your shit together by the holidays? No? Well, then you probably didn't grow up in Austria or Germany or the Czech Republic or somewhere else around the hills of Bavaria. I'm sure you know about St. Nick, jolly old soul, bringing holiday joy and cheer and merriment to all the good boys and girls of the world every Christmas Eve. And now by the end of this episode, you're going to know everything you need to know about Santa's dark, Germanic, demonic, underworld living pal, Krampus, in this dark, strange, even festive edition of Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Now, I hadn't heard about Krampus. He gets called both. I'm going to call him Krampus for this episode. And you can say, like, well, actually, shut the fuck up. He's folklore. He can be Krampus or Krampus. But I hadn't heard of Krampus. I guess I'll say Krampus. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I like the ring of Krampus a little better. But I hadn't heard of him until very recently. Listener Jeremy Judd actually recommended him to me on Facebook. He had also recommended a previous episode that I did. But I actually had been thinking about him before. I think I heard about him at for some friends or something. And when I was thinking about doing a holiday episode, I wanted to find a fun angle on it. I didn't want to just do the traditional, just the origins of Santa and Christmas like I did with Halloween. And then I remembered this Krampus fella, and I was like, I got to find out more about this guy. And the second I read, finished the first paragraph on him, I'm like, okay, this is definitely Timesuck material. And by the way, quick thank you to all the new Timesuckers. I put out a little blast on Pandora, and you responded. Thousands of new listeners. So I'm very, very excited about that. I hope you're liking it. And, I'm just excited to keep this kind of train moving along down the tracks. Hopefully keep making it better. The more listeners I get, I might actually be able to monetize it on some level someday. And the benefit there for you is I can increase the quality. I don't know, maybe actually have a studio to record in, get the sound that much better. Maybe have an assistant someday to help with this research, because I love it. But Jesus Christ, I was up to 1 a.m. last night, and I'd already done a bunch of research because I couldn't stop watching fucking Krampus videos because it's insane, and I just couldn't believe I didn't know anything about this. And I spent for this roughly half an hour episode a lot of hours this week. My wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's Krampus, all right." And then she saw a video and then it freaked her out. She's like, all right, don't talk to me about it. So she will not be listening to this episode, I don't think. I think she's going to check out on this one. I didn't realize that 3 Krampus movies came out in 2015 last year. There was, I don't know where I was for all this. There was actually, one was a feature film, a major theatrical release, just called Krampus, starring Adam Scott, Toni Collette, David Koechner. I love David Koechner. And grossed almost $62 million at the box office on a $15 million budget, 65% fresh rating from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, which is good for a horror movie. Horror movies usually just get fucking trashed on there. And then there was another one, a Netflix one, Krampus the Reckoning. 0 critics rated it on Rotten Tomatoes. 14% of the audience liked it. Produced by Funhouse Features instead of Universal, like the previous one. It grossed approximately $0 on however much the executive producer was able to wrangle from manipulated relatives into giving him money for that piece of shit. It looks fucking absolutely terrible. I don't mind a low-budget horror movie, but it looks you might actually just want to watch, if you have Netflix. No, actually, just go to YouTube. Check out a clip from it. The CGI is so terrible. I don't know anything about CGI, but I'm confident, given a 2-day weekend seminar, I could create better special effects than the special effects used in that particular movie. It looks so bad. But then there was a third one that I actually did watch. I want to watch Krampus still, the main one with Adam Scott and Toni Collette and all that. It looks pretty good to me. And the clip I played in the cold open, that actually comes from that movie. He comes to take. But it's one of those shitty things where, like, it's on Cinemax. I don't have Cinemax, and so you can't rent it on Amazon. Amazon wants to trick, like, it's like, hey, watch this movie with a 30-day fucking free trial to Cinemax. I'm like, no, because then that's going to turn into me paying for Cinemax for 6 months because I forgot that the free trial expired, and I haven't watched Cinemax. I'm sure there's good programs on there, but I think like Banshee and some stuff that look pretty cool. But I already got Netflix and HBO and plenty to watch. I think of Skinemax. When I think of Cinemax, I think of jerking off to soft porn at 2:00 in the morning when I was 13. Because we had it and my mom didn't realize what kind of shit was on through the middle of the night. Luckily for me, but anyway, I did watch A Christmas Horror Story, which is an anthology horror movie, also in 2015. William Shatner's in that one, and so it's like 4 little tales woven together, all about Krampus and Santa, and it features a fantastic fucking showdown, like a fight scene between an old Santa Claus and the demon Krampus. And there's a bunch of other shit you can find on there. American Dad did some Krampus stuff back in 2013. I'm going to reveal later that Anthony Bourdain did a Krampus kind of animation thing. It's crazy. There was also another movie in 2014, Krampus, the Christmas Devil. Terrible film on Amazon Video. Excuse me. So what is Krampus? You're probably wondering. I'm talking all these movies. Okay, here we go. Krampus is traditionally depicted as a goat kind of human hybrid. Like, to me, he looks like an evil version of the Greek god of the wild Pan. Like, horned human head. So he's got goat horns kind of coming out of his forehead. He's got a human torso. He's got goat legs. Occasionally, in some old pictures, he has one human leg, one goat leg. But for the most part, he's got full goat. Let's just say full. He went full goat below the waist. Fangs, long forked tongue. He likes to kind of like a long creepy forked tongue. He likes to roll out. Sometimes he likes to lick kids' faces. Fucking weirdo. And the face of kind of Satan is the modern Krampus. He just looks like a fucking demon. And he's draped in chains. He's almost always draped in chains. He which I guess comes from some early Christian symbolism of being bound in hell. Like bound to the underworld. That's where the chains come from. So he's dragging chains around. That's scary, Thinking about as a kid, you hear some chains being dragged down the hallway. You're like, oh, fucking Krampus is coming. And he has he has a sack on his back, like a wicker basket type of thing. And you're gonna find out what he puts in there. And then he has like a whip, like a wicker, kind of it's like horsehair and. I'll get to it in a little bit. Some kind of stick, birch. There we go, like birch stick. And so what he does is he shows up on usually with Saint Nick, and we're gonna dig into that. We think of Christmas here in America. I had never even heard of Saint Nicholas Day until 3 years ago, because my wife, her mom is 100% German and Catholic, and Saint Nicholas Day is a Catholic holiday. And kind of where Christmas comes from, if you trace it back. But it's like on December 6th. So in a lot of European countries, when they weren't celebrating Christmas, some places still don't necessarily celebrate Christmas. They celebrate a very similar, like the original kind of Christmas, if you will, St. Nicholas Day on December 6th. And that's where kids get some toys, if they're good. And on December 5th, the night before, St. Nick's Eve, that's when St. Nick brings the fucking toys. And in a lot of the Germanic parts of the world, he wasn't alone. He had his helper, kind of. I wouldn't say they were friends by what I've read. It's not like they were buddies, but but basically, like Krampus was the yang to Saint Nick's yin, where like Saint Nick is literally a saint in the Catholic world, and he's fucking good. And he's the patron saint of kids, and and he's bringing toys for the good kids, But if you're a bad kid, Krampus is his counterpart, and you don't want to hear his hoofs in the hallway. You don't want to hear those chains. Because he might literally take you to hell. That is part of the Krampus legend. Bad kids, he fucking beats them with his birch stick, whips them. And then sometimes he like licks their face. That's never really fully explained. I've read a lot of fucking shit about Krampus, and there's never like, here's why he would lick people's faces. There's just pictures of him licking kids' faces. I guess just for the sheer terror of it, to have a demon licking your face before you're gonna get whipped. Or it actually might come because sometimes he eats kids. So in some parts of the legend, he eats kids. So maybe it's just like, he's getting warmed up, wants to lick a little bit of face before he throws him in a sack and takes him back for an underworld snack. So that's that's the gist of who this guy is. And I'm like, where does this come from? And the origin of Krampus is it's Germanic, as is the word. Krampus comes from the High German word Krampen, which means claw. I'm probably pronouncing that horribly. Krampen, whatever the fuck. But it means claw, and according to like Norse mythology, Krampus is the son of Hel, Hel, one L, the goddess who rules the underworld in kind of some Norse pagan, traditions. And no one knows the exact time or place the myth began, but we do know it's been told in various forms. This legend of Krampus in the Alpine regions of Austria, Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, Czech Republic, the whole Bavarian region for at least a few hundred years, possibly going back to even pre-Christ, is what some historians believe. And right now on this too, like as I tell the story again, if you're like, I don't know, actually he does this or he does that, well, nobody fucking knows because it was an oral tradition, right? Like there's various versions of Krampus because it was Bavaria was very regionalized in medieval times and pre-medieval times. And so a lot of people didn't like leave their village. So he was kind of like just this boogeyman. It's like, word would get around kind of like the telephone game rumors of Krampus. But then, each little village, those people talk in their little mead hall or wherever the fuck they're hanging out with their families. And, and because no one's writing shit down, the story kind of shifts and stuff. And then each little village kind of comes up with their version of Krampus and then passes that version down. So there's, a lot of variations about who this guy was. And because some versions he's more pagan, some versions he's more Christian. Some people, it's hilarious to me that you go on YouTube and you watch these Krampus videos and just grown-ups are like, well, actually, fuck, you're wrong. Krampus is not demonic in origin. He's actually part of the Norse mythology. And then other people are like, well, Krampus is actually satanic, and shut the fuck up. He's made up. Arguing over Krampus's exact origins is as stupid as arguing over like the longevity of leprechauns or the height of Sasquatches. Which I'm sure some fucking idiots are out there doing. Actually, Sasquatch is between 6'6" and 8'6". If you knew anything about shit that's not real. Actually, leprechauns do not live. They do not live longer than 150 years. What? You think a leprechaun lives 200 years? What fucking parents' basement are you hanging in? Because my mom told me, I don't know. Fucking a lot of stupid nerds arguing over a lot of dumb shit on the internet. So anyway, fucking Krampus, there's, various versions is what I'm getting at there. I got a little worked up there about I was just reading way too many troll comments on YouTube. They always get me fired up. Just the shit that people argue about. So anyway, the more I kind of like started to dig in about, Krampus, I started to wonder, well, how does he get like associated with Santa? Like these new movies, it's Santa Claus. Like in the A Christmas Horror Story, it's Santa versus Krampus. And so I'm like, well, how did these two get paired up? And so in order to figure that out, I realized I got to learn more about actual Santa. Like, where the fuck does Santa come from? I don't know. I realized I don't know shit about Santa. I didn't even know about Saint Nick, the real Saint Nick, until a couple years ago, because I wasn't raised Catholic. Yeah, so here's Santa. Let's get into Santa, and then we'll, as we learn about Santa, we'll go back into to Krampus, to Krampalopolis. I don't know how to say words. But I do know how to say Saint Nick. You can't mispronounce that. Nick, Nick, rhymes with dick. Can't fuck that one up. I hope. Okay, so the story of Santa can be traced back to an actual dude. St. Nicholas, he was a real guy. He was born sometime around 280 A.D. I say sometime around there because they didn't have, regular hospitals with, perfect birth records. But he was born in Patera, Lycia, which was part of the Roman Empire, like modern-day Turkey. Just a little east, a little south of the Alps region where old Krampus got going, where his hoofs were fucking stomping around, torturing kids and shit, whatnot. Apparently, St. Nicholas fellow, he was born into a wealthy Greek family, and he was the only son in this family, so jackpot, hello, trust fund. And he was set financially, and his parents died when he was young, and he was raised by his uncle, who was a bishop in the early days of the Roman Catholic Church, which at first sounds super sketchy, right? Who wants to be raised by a lone uncle who's also a Catholic priest? Sounds like a good recipe for some diddling. But I think this was an era, before the Catholics had, found it to be fashionable for priests to molest kids. This was when that was fucking... It wasn't cool yet for the priests to stick their fingers in kids' buttholes. There's probably so many Catholic friends who'd be like, fuck you, dude. Shut the fuck up. There's plenty of priests who don't molest kids. Okay, so but he apparently there's no stories of him being molested. I don't even know why. I need to clarify that. That's just in my head. When I hear priests, I think, who are they molesting? Still, man. Ever since fucking it was 2001, 2002, and all that shit came to light. That's all I can think about when I think about priests raising boys. But his uncle was a good one. And his uncle kind of, raises him in the church, not surprising. He's a bishop. He's going to be raised in a religious household. And he takes to it, and he follows his uncle's footsteps. And St. Nick goes into the church as well and also becomes a priest. He's ordained, and then later a bishop himself. And by all accounts, super cool dude. Extremely nice, extremely generous. Hard to find a bad word about St. Nick. The only thing I read that was even slightly negative is he punched some dude at the Council of Nicaea when they were working some shit out with Constantine about the Bible, some religious argument, and he got so worked up that he punched some quote-unquote heretic. So, you don't fuck with St. Nick about God, or you might get punched in the face. Other than that, couldn't be a nicer guy. Could not be a nicer guy. And there are numerous stories floating around of him using his family wealth to help those who are less fortunate, especially kids. There was some story, there was like a famine in the city he's living in, and this like ship of grains comes, and he wants to give all the grains to the poor, and they're like, well, yeah, because this is our stuff. You got to fucking pay for it. You can't just... And then there was something where like he did pay for it, and then dispersed it to all the poor, but then also magically the sailors' grain was like restored, so they were able to like get all this grain to the poor people, and then still have even more to sell. So some kind of story about that. The most famous deed associated with him is there's a dad in the city he's living in that has 3 daughters, and the dad is very poor. And apparently in the 4th century, in this part of Lycia, in this part of the Roman Empire, if you had girls and you didn't have enough money for a dowry and you couldn't get them married, there was basically one other option. They were going to be prostitutes. So it was either wife or prostitute. And even if you weren't a prostitute, everyone just thought you were like if you were a 30-year-old woman not married, they're like, wow, she's a fucking whore. I mean, that was sadly the reality of that day. St. Nick felt bad for this dad. And so the legend has it that he tossed 3 gold bags of purses, of gold coins over the wall of this guy's property, and then one for each girl, a dowry for each girl, so that the dad could then, get them married. And he tossed them over because he didn't want to have the guy feel guilty or have the guy feel indebted to him. He just wanted to do it in secret. But word got back to St. Nick that the dad had found out that he gave him the money, and then St. Nicholas was, I guess, apparently like, well, just don't tell anybody. I don't want, you don't need to, you don't owe me anything, blah, blah, blah. Well, word does get around that he had secretly, St. Nick, he's not saint at this time, he hasn't died yet, but that Nicholas the bishop had given him this money. And so then the word travels around where basically anytime anyone has given a secret gift, they assume that, the Bishop Nicholas was the one who did it. And then, and he does numerous other generous things, so many things that after he dies, he's he becomes a saint. He's given the title of Saint Nick, and he's the patron saint of sailors and of kids. And anytime somebody gets, again, a gift in secret, it's like they think that Saint Nick was giving them that gift. And so if you're a kid back in medieval times and Christian, and pre-medieval, the shortly after he died, Saint Nick was your dude. If you're a sailor and a kid, Saint Nick was definitely your dude. Like if you're some kid out in the high seas and the waves are getting rocky, Saint Nick is your fucking go-to to pray towards. And then if fucking pirates get a hold of your ship and kill all your crew and then, and fucking rape you and make you walk the plank and you're floating out there in shark-infested waters, you don't hate anyone more than Saint Nick. You're like, motherfucker, you really hung me out to dry. But anyway, it's this secret gift-giving thing attributed to Saint Nick that leads to the whole Santa Christmas stuff eventually. Because actually some other kind of things we do now come from Saint Nicholas, where there's various, again, these oral traditions back then. There becomes various, versions of how he gave this dude the money. And in one version, when he threw one of the bags of gold over the wall, it landed in one of the daughter's stockings, which she was like drying out on a clothesline, essentially. And so that's where stockings come from. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. I had to dig deep to find that. I had no idea that's, from what I gather, the origin of Christmas stockings. Saint Nick tossing his bag of gold. It's pretty kind of funny, some daughter trying to get married. She's washing her stocking out there and hanging it to dry, and then that becomes like a kid's Christmas stocking, through the years. And also the chimney thing also comes from Saint Nick, where in another version of the story, he tossed one of the bags of gold down the chimney of this guy's house, and so that's why Saint Nick comes down the chimney. Fucking pretty crazy. And another weird, I don't know if anybody else has heard of this. Maybe email me if you have. I didn't know this is a thing. I couldn't find a lot of info on the web, but apparently I'm into Germans. My ex-wife, also half German, just like my wife, and my ex-wife family had a tradition of they'd put an orange in the stocking. I don't know if I'd never heard of that one before. Like there would be candy or gifts, whatever, but everyone would get an orange. And apparently that goes back to Saint Nick as well, where there was these paintings or whatever of Saint Nick, really, and he had 3 gold orbs, that he has in the paintings associated, to symbolize, the 3 bags of gold. Well, in some of the paintings, these orbs look like fucking oranges. People thought, other people were like, that's cool. He's got some oranges. Look at him with his oranges. I don't know how they would misconstrue that, but probably because people didn't see oranges all the time. Maybe the gold paint took a little bit of an orange tint. It's a ball, and they're just like, look at that fucker with his oranges. That's cool. And then it became like this magical symbol because people kind of gave him these magical qualities of being a saint and being able to sneak down your chimney and give you secret gifts. And he was also magical enough to get fruit in Northern Europe in the winter, which is not a fucking easy thing to do. They didn't have Trader Joe's or grocery stores shipping that stuff in, keeping it year-round. And if you could get an orange in Germany, in the 5th century, in the winter, you fucking knew some shit. You were a clever motherfucker. And so that's where that also is traced back to St. Nick. So how did he become Santa? And this is all fascinating to me. I had no idea. Turns out Santa, as we know him, American in origin, very heavily. So here we go. We're gonna run through this. 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. Europeans are bringing these Catholic Europeans are bringing their Saint Nick kind of versions, and basically Saint Nick's day is like December 6th is Saint Nicholas Day, and then on December 5th, like my wife, you put out shoes, or instead of some people do stockings, some people do shoes. I don't know exactly why shoes, but you put them out like in front of your door of your bedroom on December 5th that night, and then you get toys and shit on December 6th. My kids hit the fucking jackpot with Lindsay now, because now they get toys on December 6th and December 25th because they're fucking spoiled. But so they bring over this tradition of St. Nicholas Day, and like Columbus named a Haitian port for St. Nicholas on December 6, 1492. In Florida, Spaniards named an early settlement, St. Nicholas Ferry, that's now Jacksonville. And so again, they bring over St. Nicholas Day, this celebration, but Also, a lot of Protestants are coming over to the New World in America, and especially like in New York City, New Amsterdam, all that kind of, back in the early days of settling America. And the Protestants, after this Martin Luther and John Calvin and the whole Protestant Reformation from 1517, that pushed away from Catholicism. One of the things that the Protestants did not like was the saints. They felt that took away from the power of Jesus. They didn't like all that Mother Mary shit, and they didn't like the saint stuff. So they wanted nothing to do with St. Nicholas Day, just on the grounds that it's almost like idolatry, like worshiping this saint. So they're like, nope, fuck that. We're not doing that. But they did want to recognize the birth of Jesus, which was December 5th. Pope Julius I was who decided it would be December 5th, back shortly after 336 AD. That's when Constantine started celebrating the birth of Jesus on December 25th. So there was some people wanted to recognize the birth of Jesus. Some people wanted to recognize St. Nicholas Day. And there was just kind of a lot of discord over how the holidays or how winter should be celebrated in America. And God, sorry, this is all kind of crazy here. So some people, like the Catholics, they wanted to go and celebrate, have Mass. They wanted to have the day off of work, like December 5th, to celebrate like the birth of Jesus. Some of the Protestants didn't think that was a regular holiday. They think it should just be Sunday, and there was all this fucking back and forth. Well, in 1809, I know I'm kind of being convoluted here. I'm trying to get to it. In 1809, Washington Irving. I had no idea this was a thing. He's the dude who wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Rip Van Winkle, among a lot of other works. One of America's first, authors of note. He joins the New York Historical Society, a society that named St. Nicholas as the patron saint of the city of New York and the Historical Society itself. And in honor of St. Nicholas Day and, the society he just joined, Washington Irving published the Knickerbocker's History of New York on St. Nicholas Day in 1809, a work of satirical fiction. And in this book, there's numerous references to a jolly St. Nick character, who is not a bishop, but a jolly elfin Dutch dude who brings toys down the chimney. The seeds of Santa are being sown. And then, not that long after, in 1821, the first lithographed book to be published in America, first illustrated book to be published, was called The Children's Friend, a New Year's present to the little ones from 5 to 12. It was a booklet containing a poem about Santa, along with 8, hand-colored engravings. It was like 25 cents. The author was this Presbyterian minister, Arthur Stansbury, Isaac Doolittle, William Armand Barnett were the lithographers. William Gilley was the publisher. And what makes this important, it contains the first known visual representation of Santa Claus and his sleigh and reindeer. And it's a reminder that in 1821, New Year's was still a popular date for Santa's arrival, but then it moves it over to December 24th. So it changed it to, it takes it, because they're kind of like all over the place in early America. And then this book was like, okay, December 24th is when Santa, the night before, Jesus' birthday is when he brings everybody presents. And I'm not going to read anything from the poem because it fucking sucks by today's standards. And he's kind of a Nordic looking dude because the people writing it are of Nordic descent, and that's how and he's fucking the elves are going to come along shortly because in Scandinavia, where a lot of these people are from, people believe in elves, and sometime around this same era is when people in Scandinavia started wondering why are these elves living up in the fucking snow? Oh, because they're working with Santa. That's all this stuff starts happening around the same time. And because and then also, okay, here's when it really gets cemented. 1823, another poem is written, widely circulated. It's A Visit from St. Nicholas, now better known as The Night Before Christmas. It's 1823, The Night Before Christmas, and the previous story I just mentioned, heavily circulated. There's not a lot of other books at that time. And because there was no saint, no religious imagery, everyone felt comfortable celebrating this new family holiday. So, in the 1820s is when Christmas, is when the date kind of gets locked down, is when Santa, as we know him now, gets fucking born, is created, and that's when Christmas, as we know it, gets going. What about Krampus? What about him? Why doesn't he show up? Why isn't he? When did he become associated with, Christmas? And the short answer is fucking never. He didn't have shit to do with Santa. the way it's commonly known now. In the movies, again, he gets thrown in there because it's all kind of confused with Saint Nick. And but in the 17th century, Krampus was tied, again, like I said before, to the Germanic celebration of Saint Nicholas. And he was the one who would, come along with him. And now actually, Krampus is being, he's kind of having a resurgence. I shouldn't say resurgence, because he was never cool in America until recently. Now there's like festivals in, December in like Los Angeles and Philly, New York, Toronto, around North America, celebrating Krampus. But really, to me, it's kind of like, it's loosely associated with Christmas, because people get it confused, because it's actually associated with Saint Nick. And really, it's just an excuse to have like this kind of Comic-Con type atmosphere where it's just people who want to dress up in demon suits, get drunk, and whip strangers. I'm not fucking kidding. Watch some YouTube videos on Krampus celebrations, and it's just people scaring kids. And the reason it wasn't popular before, the reason it never got associated with the early Santa stuff is because it's fucking scary. In colonial America, the puritanical roots, people don't want to hear about a goat monster fucking whipping kids and taking them to hell, possibly eating them, throwing them in a fucking sack. Legend of Sleepy Hollow, that featured a headless horseman, but that's about as dark as they got. That's a far cry from a goat demon draped in chains. And so he stayed in Europe. He stayed in the dark woods of Bavaria for the most part, where he belonged, which just made me think about like Germans for a second. What the fuck? Last couple centuries, they can't get shit right. They started 2 world wars, Holocaust, and they insist on giving jolly old Saint Nick a fucking demon sidekick. And there are people that take him seriously over in Europe. I'm making fun of him, but there's an argument kind of for him where it's like, well, naughty kids should have incentive to be good. Santa should have a counterpart. Shouldn't all just be fun and festive. Should be, if you're a good kid, you get to fun and festive. If you're a bad kid, you get to whip. So there you go. So let's get into some weird facts. I have some other stuff that doesn't really fit into a narrative. It's just shit I want to share with you. So let's just get into it. Weird facts.
Weird facts.
Okay, here's the weird. I got 4 of these. Weird Krampus fact number 1 is I did mention this earlier, I guess, but some legends say it's crazy to me that Krampus actually eats the misbehaving kids. Like there's a postcard from the 19th century that I'll put on timesuckpodcast.com that shows Krampus with a bunch of human hearts in a wicker basket on his back, and he's roasting 3 more hearts over an open fire, which I assume are kids' hearts. How'd you like to get that fucking card from your uncle? Hope your kids are being good. Old Krampus is ready to rip your fucking heart out and eat it if you're not. I was trying to do some kind of Scandinavian accent. As if life isn't hard enough for kids in the 19th century. Your little brother Timmy has polio. You've got rickets or some other disease that affected people before grocery stores and vitamins were around. Your mom died last year in childbirth, popping out your little sister Greta, who almost died of the whooping cough 2 weeks ago. Your dad's tilling some field. He's fucking never plays with you because he's exhausted. And now you got to worry about a goddamn Christmas demon fucking taking you to hell or eating your heart. It's crazy. Okay. Another thing I learned out, second thing, weird fact, is Krampus, I guess I'm using the term facts very loosely because all this stuff is just legend. Krampus isn't the only Christmas monster. There's also, for example, the funniest other one I found is the Icelandic Yule Cat. I'm not making this up. There is a character tied to Icelandic tradition in which those who finished their work on time received new clothes for Christmas, while those who were lazy did not. And to encourage children to work hard, parents told the tale of the Yule Cat, saying that the Yule Cat could tell who the lazy children were because they did not have at least one new item of clothing for Christmas. And then these kids were sacrificed to the Yule Cat. So if you were lazy, you didn't get new clothes, and then you were murdered to pay tribute to a fucking Nordic cat. And it looks like a house cat. It looks just like a weird house cat. Fuck that. Like if these were real, if Krampus and the Yule Cat were both real, I'd be terrified of the chain-wielding Krampus, but I wouldn't give 2 shits about Yule Cat. I'd stomp the fuck out of a Yule Cat before getting sacrificed. All right, weird fact number 3. I watched a video of Krampus parade when dudes dressed up as Krampuses would just like randomly grab onlookers and just beat them with a big old birch stick. So if you're thinking about going to one of these festivities, make sure you know what you're getting into. It's a lot of drunk dudes carrying sticks and people who have put a lot of work into dressing up like a demon. If that isn't a recipe for violent trouble, I don't know what is. You know, guys who spend an inordinate amount of time putting together a Krampus costume, because it's not like you can just go to the store and it's not like they're wearing like cheesy costumes. These things are like Hollywood level costumes, and now they're drunk roaming the streets with birch sticks. It's pretty funny shit on some of these videos. They just start beating like random people. And also, this is so random to me. There is a stop-motion animated Krampus carol on YouTube written by none other than the food guy, Anthony Bourdain. Yeah, you can find this. It's this like little cartoon where these two kids are licked by Krampus. They're beaten with a stick, and then they're thrown into his Krampus bag to be taken to hell. I'm going to put a link to that at timesuckpodcast.com in the episode description. And it was supposed to air as part of this Travel Channel holiday special in 2011, but the Travel Channel execs found it to be too disturbing. Hilarious. So there you go. That was some weird facts.
Weird facts.
Okay, so there we go. There's Krampus. And again, before I get into the top 5 takeaways, it's just funny to me. The funniest thing about Krampus that when I learned is that a lot of people in like the Czech Republic and things really argue, especially on some YouTube videos. They're like in favor of this guy. Like they like this tradition. They think it's good for kids. And I guess there is some argument for that because really in a lot of these places, Krampus goes after kids who aren't getting the Christmas spirit, who are not being generous, who just want like the commercial version. They just want toys and stuff. Krampus is like, no, this isn't about just fucking toys. You either be good, you be a jolly Christmas kid, and and happy with what you get and good with your parents, or you get fucking beaten with a stick. And I don't think the modern ones push the hell angle as much. I think it's more just like Krampus is going to give you a piece of coal, which is another thing in some traditions. By the way, I forgot to reference earlier. Krampus would be the one to bring the coal. So I know that kind of got brought over to America where you get like coal in your stocking. Well, in some places of the world, Krampus was you had a fucking horned goat devil putting that in your stocking. But I just disagree though that you need this demon to teach your kids how to be happy about stuff for Christmas. I feel like if you've gotten to that point where your kids aren't going to behave unless they truly believe that they will be taken to hell by a goat demon, I think you fucked up earlier in your parenting. I think you didn't set consistent limits. You didn't have enough open communication about why we're good. You didn't, you didn't spend enough time with them or something. If you've got, I don't think you should need a monster to get your kids to behave. That's just me. All right, without further ado, this episode's running long as they always do. Let's get into some top 5 takeaways.
Timesuck top 5 takeaways.
All right, number 1. Sometimes Krampus would take kids to hell for just a year, and then I guess just give them back to their parents. Just really think about that. Think about that was a big part of this legend, is that Krampus would throw you in his sack and he'd take you to hell for a year, just like return you the next, St. Nicholas Eve. Maybe that's how we got Hitler. He's part of the fucking region where this stuff was going on, where Krampus stories were being told. I just don't think spending a year in hell is a good way to work on staying on the good list. Like, if you can survive a year in hell as a kid, you're either catatonic when you get back, or you're fucking unbreakable. You don't spend a year in hell and then just become like an accountant or a loving father or tavern owner, when you grow up or something, Have you met Johan? Good dude. Apparently he was real shit as a kid, but then he went away for a year and he's been a perfect angel ever since. No. You're going to be a monster when you come back. Okay, number 2. Check out A Christmas Horror Story on Netflix if you haven't. I wouldn't recommend to see it in the theater, but it's a decent holiday movie, a horror holiday movie for sure. Or at least watch the Santa versus Krampus fight scene on YouTube. Number 3. Americans made up Santa. USA! Who knew? I thought for sure it'd be Swiss. I don't know why I thought that. I thought for sure it would be Swiss. Maybe just because he's jolly and he likes chocolate and he has a big-ass fucking beard. Or like Norwegian, Scandinavia or something. Nope, New York City. Who? New York City! I would have never guessed that Santa came from New York City. And you got to start there because, people thought St. Nick was just too Catholic-y. So there you go. Number 4, both Christmas stockings and Santa, if you trace them back far enough, are Catholic in origin. So think about that, fundamentalists. You can bitch about the Pope ruining the Bible all you want, but, your kids are Catholicing it up every Christmas morn. Number 5, most importantly, Krampus is Santa's child-licking, child-beating, kidnapping, demonic sidekick. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that, especially when you're trying to fall asleep on Christmas Eve. Are those reindeer hooves on the roof? Maybe. Or maybe they're a fucking Christmas demon, right? Coming to take your soul.
Timesuck top 5 takeaways.
So there you have it. Now, hopefully you know what Krampus is. Probably a lot more about Santa as well. I feel like I got a little meandering. I apologize in the middle of that one. I try to give a slick tale, but there's so much info. That's what I've learned about doing all these time sucks. Is I think I can stick to one narrative, and there's so much other shit. You just keep getting pulled. As I knew I would. I mean, that's the whole fucking premise of this podcast. It is. I could spend just the rest of my life on some of these episodes. It feels like. Because, you start reading about Krampus, then you start reading about St. Nick, and then you start reading about Santa, and then you start reading about fucking Czech Republic, And then you're watching video after video of kids getting scared by people in costumes, and then you're laughing a lot, and then you're having some drinks, and then you're watching more of those videos because it is pretty funny. But yeah, hopefully, though, you did take away some cool stuff. And again, in this warm and fuzzy holiday spirit of Krampus, I do want to thank all of you for continuing to listen. And again, I want to thank all the new Pandora listeners. So excited about that. Every time I see the numbers bump up, every time I see a new review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you leave them, I just get so happy. And I feel like, this is something that has legs. This is something that can continue on and that you will enjoy. And just as a reminder, tell your friends and family about it. Rate it on iTunes if you haven't. And if we get 8 more ratings, we're at 92 as I record this. Like I said before on a previous episode, every 100 ratings I get, there is going to be a bonus episode, so you get 2 the following week after 100 ratings have been reached. So we're very close. So, get in the holiday spirit. Give me the gift of a rating. I'll give you the gift of a fucking bonus horrific episode on something else as evil and despicable as Krampus. And finally, thanks for all the topic suggestions. The list is really growing long. There's some really good stuff on there. So much good stuff. One of them that I just keep thinking about every time I think about topics is President Johnson showing his dick in the White House. That I gotta see if there's enough meat out there on the web to make that a full episode. But apparently, one of our presidents was notorious, amongst other things, for whipping his dick out during around senior officials. Just check out my. Apparently, he had a big dick and he liked to show it around. Unbelievable, leader of the free world. So anyway, happy holidays, everybody. Lock your doors. That might not be reindeer that you are hearing. It might be goddamn Krampus.
His name is Krampus. He and his helpers did not come to give, but to take.